and who might lose from this push. And to help unpack this, I have with me here, like I mentioned, our in-house experts on politics here. So first, I would like to introduce you to Anna. Hi, Anna.
Hi, Anca. Hello,
Anna,
everyone.
Anna Hubert used to cover energy for us, but recently moved to the politics beat. What's keeping you busy today, Anna?
What's keeping me busy is precisely the competitiveness agenda. It's very challenging to follow for a reporter because it's constantly derailed because of crisis, and mostly energy crisis. And as you said, like I used to be an energy reporter for 6 years, and I thought when I changed job that I will completely change topic, and this is absolutely not the case. I'm still doing a lot of things dealing with energy prices, so at least I don't feel like a fish out of water.
That's great.
That's
You're going to tell us all about it in a bit. And Sean Caroll, hello.
Hi, Anca.
Sean is covering competitiveness from a more international perspective. What's keeping you busy these days?
Yeah, exactly. So I follow the EU's relationship with the United States, which is keeping me quite busy, and the United Kingdom. Of course, for the US, it's arguably the lowest point in the relationship, perhaps since the EU was founded. But for the UK, it's probably the highest point since the bad old days of Brexit. So, I mean, I think when you talk about competitiveness, when you talk about trade, when you talk about boosting the EU's GDP, you can't ignore the trading relationship with these two partners. They're arguably two of the most important trading relationships that the EU has. So I'm looking closely at them.
We're going to unpack that as well in
Absolutely.
this next minutes. And Louise, hello, Louise.
Hi, Anca.
Louise Guillot, you're covering competitiveness for us, but with a bit of behind the scenes look. Tell us what's on your mind.
Exactly. So I cover lobbying for power. And so at the moment, I'm looking a little bit at how industry in particular are trying to influence the Commission and its next initiatives on industrial policy, looking a little bit indeed at the behind the scenes, how, the Commission is coming about with its proposals, what are some of the industry's demands, whether they're met, and also how the simplification agenda is coming to life and changing the daily work of industries and companies in Europe.
Okay, that's great. And just a reminder to our audience that you can ask us questions and you can post them in the chat throughout this conversation, and our reporters will answer them for you. And I'll be keeping an eye as they come in. So let's jump straight into it. Anna, you mentioned that there is this kind of challenge between urgency, like the crises that are happening now, but also this bigger push that we're seeing from the EU to build out its competitiveness, basically. Where would you say the EU stands today in that global race to be more competitive?
I would say that we are transitioning from the diagnosis, which was the Draghi report in 2024, to actions. And as you say, these actions, the action that the EU wants to take to boost the competitiveness are difficult to implement because of the crisis, because we have a new crisis every month, and most of those crises impact the energy prices, which is precisely the weakest point of EU competitiveness, EU economy. The EU energy prices are 50% higher than in China. When it comes to gas, it's 4 to 5 times what they have in the US. So it's really an important point to take into account when we talk about competitiveness. So yes, lots of crises derailing the agenda, but still an agenda, because we have a roadmap that is probably going to be adopted tomorrow, maybe, let's see. This roadmap has been presented by the Commission last week, sent to the Council, sent to the Parliament, and it's listing priority tasks for competitiveness. So 40 tasks, from the Industrial Accelerator Act to the Capital Market Union, some stuff in tech, banking sector, lots of text with deadline. So at those dates, the negotiations would have to be finalized, the text would have to be adopted. This is like, a calendar for the next months until end of 2027 to implement the competitiveness agenda.
I mean, we spoke about this roadmap a lot in the newsroom. It was coming, it was not coming. We didn't know what's happening with it. You listed what it contains. Why is it important? Like, why does it matter? And how likely is it to get through, basically?
I really think that this roadmap is a sign that the Commission is waking up to the danger of competitiveness being perpetually sidelined by crisis. We've seen it. The best example of this, I think, is the China's debate. The commissioner was supposed to have a debate on China, so the structural impact of China on the EU economy that was supposed to be 2 weeks ago. And at the very last minute, it was changed to become a debate on Iran and in the Middle East because of the crisis. And I think this is a symbol, this is a symptom of what's going on when the EU tried to implement long-term structural solution. And the Commission understood it, and they said we will keep track of all the promises we've made, because nothing in the roadmap is new. There is no new initiative, or very few. At least we knew that they would come. So it's really about keeping track and not being derailed by crisis.
Yeah, so making sure everyone does their homework
Exactly.
at the end in an organized way.
Yeah.
Louise, I want to follow up with you. We just heard from Anna that there's this urgency, but also a long-term plan, and this roadmap is meant to present all the initiatives we have to follow through. But from what you've seen so far, why is it so difficult for the EU to build a cohesive industrial policy?
Yes, indeed. It's, I think, partly because industrial policy has not been really a competence of the European Commission so far. So far, it's been really the private domain of member states. When you think, for example, about defense, industrial defense policy, this really has been something that has been keeping member states busy. It's also very much linked to their national security, national interest. So now there is this push, indeed, with the Draghi report we've seen a couple of years ago, to have the European Union and really the EU level work more and try to build like something coherent, try to create European champions. But the Commission is also kind of learning by doing. And we've seen some industry representative not necessarily being very happy with the proposals that the Commission has put on the table. Some saying, it's too fragmented. Others says it lacks a bit of coherence. The Commission is working a bit too much in silo, going looking at one industry after the other, like the steel industry, cement, all of this. So this kind of lack of expertise, knowledge, staffing also on the side of the Commission is making things maybe a bit slower or a bit too slow, certain industry representatives say. So that's also why we're seeing some difficulties here. But member states are also keeping a very close eye on what the Commission is doing, and not all member states agree on the common vision that the EU should have when it comes to restoring competitiveness and what a strong European industrial policy means.
That reminds me of this infographic that you put together for us. It's been a very popular infographic, who wants what on in the EU race to stay competitive. I think that was the headline. I don't remember exactly. Where you mapped out for us exactly that, the split, but also the points where member states agree on certain aspects. Walk us through that a little bit to paint the picture.
Indeed. So as we explained in the story, member states agree on the diagnosis, as Anna explained as well. They agree what the problem is, but they disagree on what are some of the solutions. And so if I pick some of the examples, for example, some member states, you think Germany, Italy, would like more relaxed state aid rules to make it easier to create European champions. But other countries disagree and say, well, we should be careful if we relax those state aid rules because it might create unfair competition or not be beneficial for the end consumer in the end. When you look at climate policy as well, it's a point of tension where some members are saying, well, maybe we need to take a little bit of time here, maybe relax some of the goals that we have to create some breathing space for industries, while others as well, no, decarbonization is really our North Star in the EU. We should, remain. We should remain, the gold standard when it comes to climate policy, and decarbonization is really the future of European industry. So, we have kind of those clashing groups of member states about what are some of the policies where the EU that the EU needs to change to make it to regain competitiveness. And so this is quite interesting, because then the Commission is left navigating through, between these different groups and trying to find something and build a policy that's coherent and cohesive.
Yeah. And when it comes to the Commission kind of left navigating, the other thing we're left navigating right now is the Industrial Accelerator Act, right? Anna, where are we with that? You mentioned it briefly when you spoke to us earlier, and we talk about it a lot. Also, when we cover this in the newsroom, where are we at with that?
Yeah, maybe just to go again back to what's in it. So, Industrial Accelerator Act was presented on the 4th of March. It's mostly about made in Europe, how to enshrine this principle in key sector in when it comes to public procurement, to some public support scheme. A second and smaller chapter of this text is about FDI, of how to control foreign direct investment, in Europe. So this was presented more than a month ago. I remember the commissioner, the vice president Sejourné, saying, well, I asked the co-legislator to go super fast, to go quick on it, to be fast, to deliver very quickly. This is also what the roadmap that I was mentioning a minute ago is saying. We need to deliver, I think, by the end of the year, which is, a very ambitious deadline. But what we are seeing right now in both institutions, so Council and Parliament, on this text is not really reflecting this sense of urgency. In the Council, we published a few weeks ago a list of commentary from member states on this, and it showed the huge amount of questions that member states still have and still asks the Commission. So we are still in this phase where the Commission is asked to answer basic question or broad question, like how do we make it less complex? Because I don't remember if you mentioned it, but simplification is also one of the solutions that member states are pushing forwards when it comes to being more competitive. And this is really not about simplification. The IAA is very complex, that's true. So several member states say that. Several member states said, raised concern about the burden, the added burden it could bring on industry and on public authority when you have to prove that your product is from a European origin. Countries also questioned the use of delegated act to exclude some third country from the equivalent status, the status of made in Europe or an equivalent. And there were also concerns over compliance with WTO rules, for instance. So that's on the Council side. On the Parliament, we might see some movement very soon, actually tomorrow, probably, because the Conference of Presidents, this is the gathering of all the presidents from every single political group. They are to decide on which committee will have the competence on this, will have the lead on this text. So we have each committee, the industry committee, that is very much in favor of being alone leading the negotiation. This might not happen because you have the INTA trade committee that also want to be co-lead, and probably IMCO, so single market consumer and market committee, who also wants to be involved as co-lead. So that should be settled tomorrow, and then we will start the negotiation. They will start the negotiation at the Parliament level.
So it sounds like things are moving on the Parliament side, but it's still a bit messy because they haven't figured out who's doing what yet, but that's coming soon. But, you already you mentioned this Made in Europe provision, and while the Industrial Accelerator Act, we're going to look at how it's going to be negotiated, but the UK also lobbied hard to have, to participate, to be part of that, and there was this big debate, Made in Europe, Made with Europe. Sean, tell us, we spoke about this also a lot in the newsroom, what happened there, and why was it a win for the UK?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the UK pushed very hard. They sent their trade minister to Brussels. The Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, also had talks with EU officials. I mean, their argument was that they should be included in this Made in Europe criteria, or this European preference. I know we discussed which term to use. Both can be used. So they said that, you know, our strategic importance means that we need to be included. It's good for the EU, it's good for the UK, everybody wins. In the run-up to this file being tabled, there are essentially two different camps. One was nominally led by France, and they pushed for a stricter criteria. They essentially said that made in Europe means made in one of the 27 member states. You're either in the club or you're not in the club. And, you know, there was some grumbling that this was, you know, to punish Britain, but I think France has been very ideologically consistent on this point. They've always said that, you know, either you're in the EU and you have certain responsibilities and then you get certain benefits, or you're not in the EU. The other camp was led arguably by Germany, and they favored a broader interpretation. So this is what came to be known as made with Europe. Germany is a huge export-led economy, so I mean it makes sense for them to push for free trade. I mean it works out in Germany's favor. What was eventually agreed, or what was put on the table, of course, as Anna said, this is still being debated, but what was put on the table, the UK is considered within Made in Europe, but there are some limitations and there are some drawbacks. One of the most significant is around electric vehicles. So essentially for EVs, if you're making an EV, the parts, if they come from the UK, that's considered the same as if they come from the EU. But the car needs to be finished. It needs, the final manufacturing needs to take place in an EU country. So if you're like a Japanese company, you have a factory in the Midlands, in England, let's say. Even if you meet the 70% made in EU parts criteria, if you finalize that car in England, it's considered a third country and it doesn't get any benefits. So it really incentivizes companies to set up in the EU. And I've even heard someone call the IAA a kill switch for the British automotive car plants. So they're going to be lobbying very hard to make sure that, you know, this is watered down or this is changed. They might even take some trade action. But yeah, we'll be following that as it progresses.
Yeah, that's a good point. Let's not forget this is still a draft, right? Like this is still, it's a win in that early stage, but you know, there's still going to be this heavy negotiations. So I guess a question to both of you, when it comes to the Made in Europe provision, but just more widely on the IAA, how much do we expect this to change, and where do we expect the frictions to show up?
I would say I expect a lot of changes. I expect a lot of debates. My main question is whether, because the Commission keeps saying, debates, we had it internally. All the viewpoints were represented, and so we found this consensus, and this is it. And you can recreate the debate, you will come back to the same consensus. And this is my question, like, how are they right when they say that? Probably. I expect a lot of debate. I just don't know if the result of this debate will each time at the Council, at the Parliament, lead to the same conclusion. But it's true that in the Commission, as Sean said, the internal debate, and I will come back to that later, I think, but was very polarized around nationalities. So it was seen from the beginning as the French measures, then because Séjourné is the French commissioner, then a bit less, but still, it was that was really depending on which country you were from, this could influence your view within the Commission on the text. At the Council, of course, everything will be about where you're from. That's the logic at the Council. But at the Parliament this time, it will probably also be the case. You know, like it will probably not be right against left groups. It would much probably be depending on the negotiators' nationality. This will be where their viewpoint will be forged rather than their political sensitivity or groups.
That's an interesting one to watch. Quick follow-up to Sean a little bit. You mentioned the UK, but the same rules, because I'm looking at a question from our audience. Do the same made in Europe for third countries, does that apply to other countries besides the UK, and who else? The question here was how does it affect, for example, with the Western Balkans, if we can say anything around it, or does it apply only to the UK?
Yeah, that's a good question. It does apply to other countries. I actually wrote down the specific criteria, so I can tell you. So, under the IAA, countries that signed the WTO Government Procurement Agreement, or GPA. So this is essentially that in government contracts, foreign countries are given equal preference, or that have a bilateral free trade agreement, FTA, with the EU. They're granted equivalent treatment for things like products being considered made in Europe products and counting towards those percentage thresholds. So there's a range of countries.
Unless they have a buy Canadian or they are themselves excluding some of the EU production, like Canada and the US. If they do the buy Canadian or the buy American, then the EU kind of do the same and will apply. It's they will exclude them from.
Yeah, you need to have that reciprocity.
Yes.
You need to have the same. And there are also certain limitations. It's quite technical, but if a company owns more than 40% of the supply chain in a strategic sector, then there are limitations, as Anna mentioned, on their foreign direct investment. This is essentially targeted China.
Right. Interesting. That makes sense. And Louise, I want to come back to you now because we unpacked a bit some of the measures that are now on the table. But at the heart of what the EU is trying to do is to make things simpler, right? There's a lot of this word simplification that's being used. And I want to get your views on what are some concrete examples that you can share with us on things that are being simplified, and to kind of fold it with another question from the audience on what other omnibuses are we expecting, if we can say anything about that, and specifically if we know that there will be something on labor or social law coming up.
So indeed, we've seen a lot of omnibus bills since the start of the new commission in 2024. So far, 10 have departed. A few of them have arrived at the end of the legislative process. And to the point that you were making earlier about what will change in the IAA, I think this is also something we've mentioned earlier. Simplification, and this idea of cutting red tape, making sure EU rules are simpler, also the new rules that the Commission is creating, I think will be a big point of attention in the negotiation.
We're not yet there, right? We're not there yet.
No,
there
indeed. The IAA is considered by some industry representative as additional red tape when it comes to proving indeed European requirement, minimum content, all of this. So indeed, we've seen a number of omnibus bills that aim to simplify rules on a very wide range of topics, from corporate due diligence and sustainability reporting for companies to artificial intelligence, chemicals, environment permitting, and so there's been a bit of a ambivalence because these omnibus bills are very complex legislative proposals, and sometimes people get lost about what exactly is changing, what is not, and also making sure that if they want to influence the decisions, they target the right people and with the right technical amendments. So far, I would say there's been like mixed results, and also differences of visions for what simplification actually is. The Commission has made this a priority. Some member states also say, like Germany, Italy, that the EU needs to go faster when it comes to simplification, but others, like Nordic countries, also warn that it should not come at the expense of quality. And the EU needs to make sure that it has quality legislation that's actually implemented, and provides real legal clarity for companies.
Yeah, it sounds like from everything I've heard so far and what we've been discussing, in order to simplify, we're going through this like very complex kind of legislative process, but also set of measures that
Exactly.
is leading to a lot of confusion among folks right now.
Yeah, let's see how the future omnibus will be made, because I think the question
Yeah.
was also about future omnibus.
Yes.
So 3 are still on the pipeline and haven't been presented, unless that's what I have in my mind. So one is called Citizen Omnibus, which I don't know anything about. I don't know was in charge of this one. I just know that it was listed by the Commission on the Omnibus website. Another one is on energy product. So this will be about simplifying energy labeling, eco-design regulation. And the third one, and this will come in June. And the third one coming also in June is about taxation. This I don't know neither what exactly will be in. But I just wanted to say that because, as Louise said, there's omnibuses can be super complex, can be even seen as adding complexity, but what was also very criticized is the fact that they did not come with a proper impact assessment, or with any impact assessment. And this was also, for some people, the reason why it was so complex at the end. And in this new vein, like this upcoming legislation, omnibus legislation that we will see, the 3 I've mentioned, they will come with an impact assessment. So let's see if this will change something. Let's see if the legislation will be simpler at the end.
Indeed, yeah, the Commission has been very much criticized for this and for rushing, basically, because of this sense of urgency with the geopolitical situation that we're seeing and this, top of the agenda competitiveness goal. The Commission has been rushing things through, and the EU Ombudsman has said, maybe you need to explain better what is so urgent, why you're doing this, why you're departing from normal decision-making process. And actually next week, the Commission is going to present a better regulation communication where it's supposed to explain a little bit how it's going to change this better lawmaking process and maybe address some of these criticisms.
Interesting. So basically, all the omnibus bills we've seen so far didn't have an impact assessment. The last 3 that are going to come in will have an impact assessment. And to the criticism, I don't think the criticism was lost on the Commission. When Anna and we interviewed Teresa Ribera, the executive vice president of the Commission, and we sat down with her in her office. I mean, she was very... she was not denying the fact that this concerns exist on behalf of the people, being affected by these measures. But the other thing that came out from that conversation, if you remember, was this warning she gave on between how much simplification is too much simplification and when does it go into deregulation, which is another word that's been kind of surfacing a lot.
Yeah, this is interesting because for a long time I had the impression that there were 2 things. One was good, it was simplification. One was bad, deregulation. And this is approximately what Ribera told us too. But then I went to Antwerp, this industry summit back in February with Laura, another colleague. And there you had a German Chancellor, Friedrich Merz, going on stage and saying the EU needs to change its focus, it needs to change its spirit and to switch to a deregulation mindset. We need to deregulate every sector. This is what he said. And this, for me, was a shift. There is no more this distinction, the good, the bad. Now, deregulation might also have a nice aspect, might also be a solution in itself. It's not like the border you don't need to cross anymore. This was in February. Since then, not a lot have been said around that. It hasn't really, the debate hasn't did not very evolved. So I'm very curious to see, I will be curious to see in the coming months, if this was really a turning point to something like now there is a new goal at the EU level, and this is to deregulate, not just to simplify. I don't know. For the moment, it's just a German chancellor saying it. I would be curious to see whether it turned out to be a shifting point.
So he's the only one that's used that word. Or do you see that also coming up from other member countries, this kind of stance? I mean, we also had this other story on
Merzoni.
Yes,
we call it Merzoni.
Tell us about that.
No, but yeah, because I haven't heard Giorgia Meloni or sorry, I'm looking for the name of the Belgian Prime Minister, Bart de Wever. I don't remember them saying that deregulation is a good thing. But I can definitely imagine that they are going in that direction too, that they're aligned with Germany on this. We wrote this story about how this form a new, not couple, but like, do you say triple? Trio. They form a new trio because they are, at least this is what they want to show us, that they are aligned on the solution how to make EU more competitive. I'm not convinced that they have that they form a very coherent group. I mean, in some ideas, yes, of course, they are in favor of simplification, especially permitting should be simplified again. This is what they say, so they have some common view, but I think, and we've seen it after, because this little trio then developed into a broader group of 20 member states called the Friend of Competitiveness. Again, I'm not exactly sure to understand what is the common point between all those member states. For the moment, it's a lot of show off. So it will be interesting to see if it's only communication, like, showing that they are the new power couple, the new powerful trio of the EU, Belgium, Italy, and Germany, or if there is something like if there is content behind that, and if they are not just here for communication purpose, but also here to bring a new narrative, common solution, coherent view. That will be that's for me, that's still a question. Yeah.
Maybe just to mention as well, in terms of people pushing for deregulation, there's a lot of pressure externally from the United States. They have been very critical of Europe's regulatory regime. They say that it's stifling Europe's growth, and they say they want Europe to get better economically. Also, they've had a lot of social criticisms of Europe. And so they've been pushing for a leaner regulatory regime to sort of dismantle the Brussels effect. They focus a lot on tech, a lot on DSA, a lot on AI. Of course, if Brussels was to deregulate, this would probably be in the favor of American firms. So as much as they care about Europe, it also happens to benefit them. But yeah, they're putting a lot of pressure on the EU to go in that direction.
And then when we're talking, you've been following also this EU-US trade deal that's now being negotiated. Where do you hear some of those? What's the U.S. voice now at this moment in the negotiation? Like, where are we at with the trade deal, and what are their concerns?
So in terms of where we're at with the trade deal, we're currently at the trilogue phase. I'm sure many of our viewers know that term, but just in case they don't, it's discussions between the member states represented by the Council and the European Parliament, and the Commission is also involved overseeing the discussions. So this is sort of the final phase. It's been a very long road. I thought I'd be covering it for a few weeks. It's been months and months. It keeps getting suspended for various reasons. So Washington was getting upset with how long it was taking. It was first agreed politically between Ursula von der Leyen, the Commission President, and President Donald Trump in Turnberry in Scotland in July 2025. And then it went to the Council, to the Member States. They pretty much passed it immediately. They didn't really change it. They were happy with it. Then it went to the Parliament, and they were much less happy with the deal. Maybe just to mention, the deal sets a 15% tariff ceiling on EU goods going to the US, and it basically removes tariffs on the bulk of US products coming to Europe. So some, particularly on the left, called it the surrender deal. But those, particularly on the right, said, look, it sets stability, and business needs stability, and they know if this is passed, at least they know the rules, they know the state of play, and they can kind of adjust accordingly. So it's still being negotiated. The US has said it's vital. And we've also heard voices from the US and from the Commission saying that the Parliament particularly shouldn't overload the deal with too many amendments, shouldn't try and change it too much, that essentially what was agreed with von der Leyen and Trump, that should go through as is.
That's not what the parliament does, right? Like, we can't expect.
That's a dream of the commission
Yeah,
always.
yeah,
So please
always.
don't change too much our copy. It
Hey.
was perfect from
Yes.
the start.
Exactly. And I don't think the parliament, there are voices in the parliament who are very strongly pushing for their amendments to be included. And if they're somehow stripped out, let's see what happens with the vote in plenary.
Yeah, that's something you'll be watching closely, I'm sure.
Exactly. You can read more about it in our Power newsletter.
That's right. Good plug in there, Sean. We spoke about the complexity of the omnibus bills, of some of this legislation that's coming. And Louise, I know that you found some unexpected winners of this process, and tell us about it. Who are they, and what's their role in this whole debate?
Yeah, indeed. It actually came about after a conversation we had with Anna, where actually lawyers are, kind of some of the expected winners of this new change in legislative policymaking, because as we explained before, these omnibus bills are very complex. They're also discussed very fast, so you need to strike really precisely and quickly if you want to amend these bills. And so more and more companies have been turning to lawyers here in Brussels to help them decipher these omnibus bills. They've been asking lawyers for help just to understand what is changing. Also help them with compliance, because a lot of those companies, especially when we think about corporate due diligence and sustainability reporting, had prepared for that new directive to come in force. And had like invested a lot internally to be compliant, and now they're like faced with this uncertainty about exactly which report they will have to produce this year and next, and what's coming. So yeah, lawyers are kind of the expected winners of this.
But tell us a bit more, like, how was it for you to report on this story? I remember we had some conversations around this. It wasn't always easy to find the lawyers or get them to, like, lawyers are this like kind of very, very behind the scenes players. How was it for you to report on that story?
So indeed, like it came, this idea of a story came after this anecdote that Anna told me, that basically nowadays if you have a question, you basically turn to a lawyer, right? And so yeah, basically I just started asking, just lobbyists here in Brussels, how they go about working on the omnibus bills. If it's true, indeed, they're asking their lawyers or law firms for advice more. And some of them told me, actually, it's the case. We're consulting more. And so then I turned to some of the law firms in Brussels that some of them also do some lobbying, others don't, on behalf of the client. So yeah, and I kind of uncovered that indeed they had a lot more work over the past year because of those omnibus bills.
Was it fun to report?
Yeah.
It was a good story.
Yeah.
And Anna, you also did a little behind the scenes look after the IEA came out, looking a bit more on the commission side and some of those struggles there. What did you find out?
Yeah, it was interesting because we were told by a commission official very close to the file that this was a must. The file was a record number of meeting, cabinet level, commissioner level, the college level. It was shocked by, this person was shocked by the number of meeting and internal lobbying. The file was delayed. I think it was first tabled for in the calendar for the 25th of November, something around this, end of November, and it was finally, and it was I think 10 times on the agenda, and then postponed again, until early March when it was there presented. What was behind the scene was very interesting because, of course, you had the traditional lobbying from sectors, so industry, those who wanted to be in it, because it's a very restricted list of sector at the end. Now we're saying that it's a revolution because Made in Europe is now enshrined or could be enshrined in the legislation, but this would apply to a very limited number of sectors. Anyway, there was this classical lobbying, even sometimes inside, and then I'm referring to what some other colleagues in verticals wrote, thinking of the health verticals, also transportation. They all wrote that even inside that sector, depending on which you come from as an industrial players, you could have a different view. So it was very interesting. This was a traditional lobbying that is still always ongoing at the Commission. Then you have the lobbying coming from EU member states. So Sean said it, Germany, the Nordics, all these countries which have an economy that is turned to, how would you call it, like export-oriented, export-oriented country where you need third country for the component of what you're producing, and you also need them to export your production, whether it's cars or machineries. You need them. So this country fear retaliation from the third country who might be excluding from made in Europe status. So they were pushing, also trying to push the Commission to dilute a bit the initial goal. Then you had third country themselves, and this is interesting because they keep pushing. So of course, we've heard and we've seen the American ambassador going in Bloomberg interview. Some other also very vocal, but another strategy was to call the DG they were in contact with. So I'm thinking of DG Trade. All those smaller external DG like Ernest for Eastern neighborhood, the one that is dealing with the Mediterranean neighborhood. So those what we call external DG, they received a lot of complaints from third country. So internally, they became the one that were advocating in favor of this country because they have to deal with them. And also because those DG, so trade and the little one around trade, are still in this mindset where they really care about what the WTO will say, and we're not quite sure. I mean, there is some debates about how IAA is compliant with WTO. They care about WTO, and the core purpose or their goal for years of these DGs has been to sign as many free trade agreements as possible, and this goes in like against this core goal that they always had.
And that's basically the core of the friction that we're seeing. This tension between making the EU more competitive, but how do you do that? You gotta kind of prioritize, say, your own companies create European champions, but Europe has always been such a strong defender of international rules. Sean, like when you look at the international dimension of competitiveness, what do you make of this? Does the international rule-based economy still matter? Does it matter? There's also a lot of criticism about Europe moving towards protectionism. How do you see it?
That's a good question. I mean, the United States has said that what the EU is proposing would break international rules under the WTO. And they've said that they could take action at the WTO if this IAA goes ahead. And this is, technically, because there is a trade agreement with the US, they would be included, but because of this lack of reciprocity, this equality, they're excluded. And this is to do with the made in the US rules that they have, which was brought in under the Biden administration.
Which is not WTO compliant. We can question the compliance with WTO also
exactly.
by American rules.
But the United States uses the WTO when it suits them, but they're not necessarily beholden to WTO rulings when it doesn't suit them. I mean, they're the preeminent superpower. They make the rules. They don't necessarily have to follow the rules at times. In terms of the world-based order, that's a larger question. President von der Leyen made some comments where she seemed to question whether we're still living in that world, and maybe we need to have a certain realpolitik and realize that things have changed. This was strongly criticized. Even the President of the Council came out and criticized it. But look, the United States, in particular, the Trump administration, has no longer adhered to the rules as we knew them. If you look at the war in Iran and you compare it to the war in Iraq, the Bush administration spent a lot of time building a case for the United Nations Those old enough might remember Colin Powell making a speech at the UN about weapons of mass destruction. For the war in Iran, they just went ahead and did it. They didn't ask the UN for permission. So, I mean, are we still living in a rules-based world order? I think that's debatable.
What a great way to end this conversation with this open-ended question. We have to wrap up. We're on time now. I want to ask you very, very quickly to think of one word that you think describes how you're going to pursue your reporting going forward, how you're going to pursue your beat. What is that word? It can be just something that tells our audience kind of the defining sentiment that you have. Is it curiosity? Is it concern? Is it like, so what would that one word be? Whoever wants to start.
I was about to say curiosity because I really want to go behind the scene. I know this is in the DNA of Contexte, but I really want to know, I really want to understand more how, not just what the result, and this is important, like analyze the result, what we have, what's in the law at the end, but also really, I'm really curious in how it's being made. So this is where I will focus, and I think we need to be very curious.
Curiosity.
Question, yeah.
Great. What's your word, Sean?
Maybe uncovering, because I want to, really look at what's going on and almost connect the dots to reveal something larger, something that may have been missed. Because there's a lot of things going on, but sometimes it's only when you stand back and you look at the full thing do you really understand how everything fits together and what that really means for people.
Yes. What's your one word, Louise?
For me, it's friction. I really want to look at the friction, because the Commission has this broad messaging that the EU is aligned on a lot of things, but indeed when you look at some of the behind the scenes, there's a lot of friction happening, and I think it would be really interesting to uncover some of it as well.
I mean, with curiosity, concerns for the friction, and uncovering, we're gonna do some great reporting. So thank you so much, and thank you also to our audience. Make sure you read Power, and thanks for being with us. Bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.